So maybe you've been trying to get into editorial, but you're scared because you don't know how to use lights. Maybe you want to get that look that you see in magazines, but you don't know how to do it. And so in today's video, I'm going to show you how I took the photos you saw at the beginning of this video with very little, I guess, limited equipment. And it doesn't have to be the fanciest lights, but you can use strobe lights of any kind to get these types of photos. So today I'm going to show you how to set up the lights, how to set up the background, where to place your model, what settings you should use to get the best looking editorial photo shoots with that nice, perfectly white background and having your model really stand out. Let's talk about it. What is up, guys? Welcome back to Once Upon a Time, the greatest channel on YouTube. If you like bald heads, and guys, I heard your complaints. You don't like the blonde hair. Today, I want to tell you about one of the easiest lighting setups that I like to use. So I wanted to show you kind of like a step-by-step on how to get editorial photos, or at least get them in camera. And eventually we'll do an editing video. But for now, let's just focus on actually getting the photos coming out of the camera, which is about 90% of the job, especially because with studio lights, everything is pretty much done in camera, which helps you a lot in the end game. So first things first, let's talk about the setup. I think one of the biggest misconceptions when it comes to studio photography or strobe lights in general is that people think they need this insanely complicated setup. Like 6 lights, giant modifiers, assistants running around, sandbags everywhere, where you really don't. For this shoot, I'm using 2 lights. That's it, 2. And honestly, once you understand what each light is doing, you can recreate this look with almost any strobe light system that you own. So it doesn't matter if you're using Profoto, Godox, Alien Bees, whatever. Light is light. The important part of this is understanding what each light is contributing to the final image. So in this setup, one light is dedicated entirely to the background, and the second light is dedicated entirely to the model. Super simple. Alright, so let's start out with the background light first. The entire job of this light is pretty straightforward. It's there to light the seamless paper. But, and this is important, the goal isn't just making the background bright. The goal is making it pure white. Like white, no gray, no weird shadows, no strange gradients, just a clean white. The clean background is a huge part of what gives editorial photos that kind of polished magazine look. For this light, I usually place it to the side and centered behind the model, aimed directly at the backdrop. Now this is huge because there's definitely some trial and error here. If the light is too close, you'll get a hot spot. If it's too far, you won't have enough power to fully blow out the background. So I usually take a few test shots as I'm adjusting it until the spread looks nice and even. And don't worry if you don't get this immediately, you know, that is normal. I still tweak this stuff constantly. Another little piece that I added was a bounce light that just kind of cut off the light so that it didn't hit the model immediately. And you can see that the way that I place it is literally right at the edge of the background light. That way the model can kind of stand to the side of that and not behind that, and the light won't affect her. Now let's talk about the model placement. This is something people massively underestimate, where your model stands. Please do not put your model right against the background. I see this all the time. Someone puts the model 6 inches from the seamless and then wonders why everything looks weird. I usually like having around 5 or 6 feet between the model and the backdrop. The distance helps in 2 really important ways. First, it makes it easier for the background to blow out to pure white. And second, and this might be actually more important, it reduces the spill. Spill is basically when the light from the background starts wrapping around the subject. When that happens, your shadows get muddy, the contrast gets weaker, and your subject starts blending in with the background. And for editorial work, we want separation, we want the subject to pop. Now let's talk about the hero of the setup, the main light. Now this is the light that's doing most of the heavy lifting. This is what shapes the face, creates depth, creates contrast. Basically, this is the light people are actually noticing when they look at the image. I usually position this around 45 degrees off to the side and slightly above eye level. Now this is nothing fancy, but there's a reason this works so well. It's because it creates shape. And I talk about this all the time, but flat light usually gives you flat images. Editorial portraits almost always have dimension. You want shadows under the jaw, depth in the cheekbones, cat's light in the eyes, contrast across the face, and that's what makes a portrait feel intentional. Now modifier wise, you can use whatever you want, softbox, umbrella, beauty dish. It honestly matters less than people think. A larger modifier gives you softer transitions, a smaller modifier gives you more contrast and more punch, so choose based on the look that you really want. In this case, we have a really huge softbox, as you can see, and I put a little grid on it, and all that does is just make that soft light, because obviously it's a big spill, a little bit more directional, and you can really just see that mostly in the shadows and in the contrast when it comes straight out of camera. Now, let's talk about camera settings. And I promise this part is way simpler than people think. You know, with strobe, once your lights are dialed in, your settings usually stay pretty consistent. I usually stay around ISO 100 and shutter speed around 1/125 to 1/200. Aperture around f5.6 to f8. The ISO stays slow because I want the cleanest possible file. The higher the ISO goes, the more grain is introduced into your image, so try to keep that as low as possible. Shutter speed mostly controls ambient light, basically how much room light you're allowing into the image. And the aperture combined with the flash power is going to control a lot of your exposure. So if the model is too bright, I usually do one of two things. I either lower the flash power or step down my aperture. If the background isn't white enough, I increase power on the backlight, and that's really a balancing act. That's all it really takes. Now here's what I think is the secret sauce if I was to speak in those terms, the relationship between the two lights. I usually want my background about one step brighter than my subject, not drastically brighter, but just enough so that the background clips the white. Because if you push that background light too hard, you start getting glow around the edges of your subject. And unless you're trying to make your model look like they've ascended into heaven, it's probably not ideal. If you see glow, lower that background power. If the background looks gray, increase it. Small adjustments here make a huge difference. Now, once the lights are dialed in, honestly, lighting stops being that hard part. Now it becomes about the portrait itself, you know, getting expressive with the model, talking to them, making sure we get some movement going, the pose that we're using, what's the energy that we're trying to show off in the photo, because perfect lighting won't save a boring image. So I'm constantly making micro adjustments, chin up a little bit, turn the shoulders, shift the weight on your feet, relax the hands, eyes towards me, tiny changes, but those tiny changes are usually the difference between a photo that feels fine and one that feels editorial. And that part just kind of comes with practice. The more you shoot, the more instinctive it becomes. And that's pretty much it. That's pretty much the entire setup. Just two lights, nothing crazy, nothing overly technical. And now I'm not making this video to tell you guys that this is kind of like the ultimate editorial setup, because it's really not. You know, this is a very basic editorial lighting setup, but I think it works in many ways because, for one, it's easy to do, it's easy to implement. Most places that have studios that you can rent from usually have at least two lights that you can play with and a backdrop. And so all of these things just kind of become understanding lighting, you know? I think at the end of the day, that's what this whole video is about. It's about learning how to use strobe, getting out there and putting in practice, but also not being scared, because I understand how scary it can be to just get into something new, especially when you start seeing fractions and numbers and placements and the models, and maybe stuff's not looking right in the studio. You know, it's all a game of practice, and once you do it more, you will get better at it. So if you guys are interested in seeing a video about me actually editing the photos to get them to the polished look that you're seeing throughout all of this video, because the photos are edited, but most of it is about 90% out of camera, let me know, leave a comment down below, and as always guys, let me send you to Juan in the studio.
Alright guys, that was it for the video. Thank you so much for watching. If you're new here, my name is Juan Pablo, and I post a new video every single week with a new photo shoot that hopefully inspires you. Now, next time I see you, I'm going to take 25 stools and stack them up, and then I'm going to go to the very top and dive into a pool that's about 2 inches wide. So, catch that next time. See you next week.